Hello and welcome to the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast with me, Karen Maloney. I am your host, and the intention of this podcast is to help us open our minds, get curious about ourselves, and to raise our vibration and consciousness levels. Through these conversations, we hope that you will go on an inward journey to discover the truth of who you are and to become aware of your own energy and vibration. We have the power to consciously create our lives, but we need to wake up to this fact before we can begin the process and learn the key of self-responsibility. Check out the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Acast, Castbox, or whatever platform you listen on, and please like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Leave a review, leave a rating, as this will help it to reach more people. Check out my website as well, Soul Power Light, www.soulpowerlight.com. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to another episode. Thanks for joining me. It is me, Karen Maloney, and today I'm just riffing on my own again. And a topic that was coming up for me to talk about was stories. The stories we tell ourselves and the meaning that we create in our lives. Because honestly, it's everything. It's everything. I see it all the time with working with clients and from connecting with other incredible people on the podcast and learning about their stories. And the reality is that everyone goes through some shit, some pain, some hurt, some challenges, some difficulties, some traumas, some failures. Everyone. And everyone's story is relevant to them. And the thing about it is, if something happens, something happens. That's an absolute reality. And yes, it can be painful or traumatic or horrible or terrifying or whatever. And these are all absolutely true statements. They are 100% facts that if something has happened, it has happened. You can't unhappen it. And that is true. But the thing about it is then we build stories around it and we create meanings around it. And that's where really the sense of getting stuck then and becoming this story and becoming this identity, and eventually it becomes so ingrained and conditioned and embedded that we actually don't see it anymore. We only see maybe what's not working on the outside, or what keeps, falling apart on the outside, or, what's always lacking or missing, without really understanding that there is something still driving that story within us that is making us attract these different scenarios on the outside. And this is true, I think, for most of us. We all keep ourselves small. We all keep ourselves hidden. We all keep ourselves within our comfort zone and within a certain identity because that feels safe to us. And especially if we've been through hurt or pain or trauma or difficulties, it makes logical sense to build walls and kind of shut ourselves down in order to protect ourselves. But the thing is, we're actually not protecting ourselves. We are delaying the pain and the hardship, because what we actually have to do is completely break ourselves open. And Dr. Joe Dispenza, has a book entitled Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And this is what happens when we get caught up in our stories. They become so habitual and ingrained and conditioned that it becomes us, whether we know it or not. Oftentimes it is unconscious because, we don't consciously choose to hurt ourselves. Once we have that insight and clarity, it's like, oh my God, because you would never consciously choose to keep yourself in that space if you knew there was another way. So this is the thing about stories, and like that, they will protect us and they will keep us safe. And sometimes it's a matter of survival when an event happens at times, and that is absolutely fine because our body has such innate intelligence. It knows what it needs to do in order to survive a particular moment or period or time or difficulty or challenge or whatever. Absolutely fine. But then we keep ourselves enslaved after that. It's like that saying, the event happens, it happens once, but then we continue to choose to hurt ourselves again and again and again and again through our thoughts and the stories and the meaning that we create around it. So, for example, some stories, that people, very common, might be like, well, I'm this way because my parents were this way, or this happened to me, so I can never reach this goal, or I came from a poor background, so I'll never have money, or my business was a failure, so I'm always going to be a failure. Like, there are so many different things that we say to ourselves, but eventually, we have to come to a place where we really go within and question ourselves and really ask and get curious about, is this true? Is this really, really true for me anymore? And more importantly, is this how I want to feel day in, day out? Is this how I want to live the rest of my life? Is this who I want to be? And when we start asking these questions and getting curious, everything can shift, because once we start to question our stories and become aware in the first place of the stories that we're telling ourselves, well, we can kind of call bullshit on them. We can see them as just a pattern. It's just a thought. It's actually not a true reality. Yes, what happened would have been a true reality back, could have been a month ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago. We hold on to our stories for as long as we choose to hold on to them, really is the truth. So once we start to question, we can see, well, yes, the event was painful, it was true, but is my story now that I've carried since, telling myself that I'm a complete failure, I can never do anything right, life will never be good for me, I can never reach success, or I can never be financially free, or I can never find the relationship of my dreams, or whatever the story is that you're telling yourself, you can question that and be like, is that really true? And who said that's not possible? And when you take a bit of time and think about these and you're like, who said? You're kind of stumped for answers, because nobody says. This is something you have created. And yes, it may seem like, oh, society says, or parents says, or our culture says, or religion says, or our education says. Fine, because they're all just conditions passed down as well. But then again, when you keep asking, who said? You kind of come up stumps with no answer of, well, actually, I don't know. So then you're like, well, then why am I choosing to keep myself in this place? And if I'm the one creating the story and choosing to keep myself here, surely I can choose another story and create something different. And once we get into that space of kind of possibilities and opening your mind and moving beyond your current way of being, like that, breaking the habit of being yourself, breaking patterns of how you've always been, well, then there is the possibility for any amount of new opportunities, ideas, stories, meanings to create for yourself. Because again, meaning is a very subjective thing. Again, when you start to question meaning and who says this is the way it has to be? And sometimes I often wonder, I'm like, oh, if X event, whatever it is, wasn't marked as a failure or bad or traumatic or painful, would we have that association with it? And these are really valid questions, because seriously, think about it. If, for example, your business failing was, not seen to be a huge X against you as a person or by society or whatever, would you really be so terrified to give it a go and to try if that meaning didn't exist? And sometimes you have to admit that, no, potentially not. So then it's, why do I keep myself stuck? Why do I keep myself small? Why do I keep myself in this same place, in this same story? If at the end of the day, I can question it and see that actually it's just a meaning, a predisposed conditioning that's been passed down, that actually when I look into it deeper and get curious about it, is not really true. Well, then you're kind of like, what the hell am I holding myself back for? Whose life am I living? And why am I choosing to live this way? And again, there's no judgment, there's no right or wrong. This is just sharing a perspective from, like I said, lots of clients and lots of work on my own journey. Like I had so many stories running, and we all do. Like there's always ones to be looked at. But it's like, why am I telling myself this story? This story did serve me at one time to support me through a problem or an issue or a challenge or a traumatic time. But actually, is this story now serving me? Or is this story holding me back? And is it time that I debunk and begin to question my own story? And that's a powerful self-awareness, self-inquiry tool and technique that we all need throughout all our lives to question in order to move beyond and step into more of the truth of who we are and connect more to our full potential and to the infinite possibilities that exist. Because that is the truth. There are infinite possibilities. No matter your circumstances, no matter what you've gone through so far, none of that matters when it comes to creating the life of your dreams. Again, there are realities, but when we can see the realities and sit with the realities without the stories and the emotional charge of what has been or what went before, when we can see the facts and the realities and deal with them and use them, it's like, I can't remember who said, we use our challenges as stepping stones. We put them under our feet and use them as stepping stones to elevate us to the next level. And there is always wisdom in the challenges and the pain and the difficulties. That's where you get all the gold. But again, it takes a willingness on our part to open up and to go into that and to accept what is or what has been and have a complete non-resistance to it. Drop our defenses, drop the ego, drop the story, and just be like, oh shit, yeah, this did happen. But then again, ask, well, who am I now because of it? What did I learn? What skills and tools have I picked up? How can I help another person if it was really traumatic from not being in that position, for not being, exposed to something so traumatic? And that's the wisdom. They're the tools. Again, nobody gets away scot-free. So it's a really, really important and a highly valuable tool to be able to question ourselves and question our thoughts and question our stories and question our beliefs and question the meanings that have been handed down to us so far and the meaning of everything. Like, question it all and find your own truth. Then you see, oh man, I've just kept myself in this small little bubble without me even really knowing. And again, it's fine. It's part of the journey. But I don't know if you've read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, who was in a concentration camp during Nazi Germany, and he lost his wife, his child, his brother, all his family, his parents. And it's a really, really powerful book. But he wrote as well in that book that forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess except one thing: your freedom to choose how to respond to a situation. And that's everything. And he talks about how this is an innate human ability to all of us to create meaning. And he even argues that that will predict whether one's survival or death. Even in the most horrific of scenes, it is our ability and freedom to choose and respond to a situation that will determine whether we just survive or thrive. So that comes back to our stories and the meaning we create. Yes, we can look at them as horrible and play the victim and keep ourselves in that mode, and rightly so, But again, it's coming to a place in a situation in time going, getting really honest with ourselves and being like, is this really serving me? Does this really light me up? Is this the life that I want to live? And it's taking that wisdom, that pain, that hurt, and using it to help us evolve and grow and expand. Putting them as stepping stones under our feet to elevate us to become a better version of ourselves. For ourselves first and foremost, and then for everyone else. Because like he says, anything can disappear on the outside. Forces can take anything from us. But accept our own ability to choose how to respond to the situation, how to view it. And that's everything. That is everything. How we choose to respond is everything. Like that, it can be a matter of life and death. It's a matter of survival or thriving, because we create the meaning. The event happens, but then we add the arms and the legs and the story and keep ourselves in that space and that energy. But by the same token, we also have the ability to choose in an instant, to choose something different, to choose a different story, to see it in a new light and create a new meaning that helps you, that empowers you, that makes you feel alive and grateful, and using it as a passion and a support to help yourself and to help others. And that's when stories can be really powerful. But again, it takes a time, it takes a readiness, it takes a willingness within ourselves when we're ready to look within and question and choose something better for ourselves. That takes a process and that takes a time. And like I say, there is no judgment. Each person's time is their time. But I'm just planting the seed of the possibility that maybe you don't have to live with this story anymore. Maybe it's your time now to choose something better for yourself. Maybe it's your time to get curious and really go within and look at and become aware of your stories and the meanings and what you are creating, and really getting truthful and seeing, does it support you anymore? Does it help you survive anymore? Or actually has your medicine become your poison? Is it now hurting you more than the actual event in the first place? And when that happens, that's when we need to step up for ourselves. We need to create a new meaning. We need to find something greater, move beyond what has currently been, breaking our patterns, becoming a new version of ourselves. And it's really fascinating. And like that, it can be difficult to come to that point, but then it's magic. Once you start tapping into that kind of a mindset and having a curious and inquisitive mindset about yourself and your meanings and what you're creating, everything has the power to shift in an instant. Because at the end of the day, it's not our circumstances that determine our life. It can, but ultimately it's our decisions and what we choose to make, what we choose to believe, how we choose to be, in spite and despite of those circumstances. We are always the key decision makers in our life, and we can either do them unconsciously and stay in an old story and a pattern, or we can choose consciously and not be afraid to step into the ring, to question our own thoughts and our own stories, and to change the frequency, make better decisions and stories and meanings for ourselves. So that's the invitation. What stories are you telling yourself? How did they once serve you? Are they still serving you? What are some better choices that you can make now? Better meanings that you can create for yourself going forward to make you feel more empowered, to move beyond your little box and your comfort zone and playing small? Is it time for you to step up, to step into your light, to create more and to be the best version of yourself? Is it time to shine? So that's the invitation. Always. It's our life. Each of us individually, it's our life. And yes, shit'll happen, but what we choose to do with said shit is all down to us. Let me know how you get on. Reach out, send a message, and as always, thank you everyone who tunes in, who listens, who shares. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts as well. That'd be great. That's a way for Apple to help bring the podcast to other people. Have a super day. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get notified every time a new show is released. Get more information on this week's guest as well on my website www.soulpowerlight.com.